Hello and welcome to week 3. This is going to be our last week of hand drawing, and this week we're going to talk about ground plans. Most of you are probably vaguely familiar with the concept of ground plans, which can be thought of in their most basic sense as an overhead view of the project. First, I'll start with a little terminology and say that in architecture, these are usually referred to as floor plans, because they are almost always literally a plan of the floor or of a floor. If you're talking about a multiple story building, each floor or story would have its own plan, hence floor plan. In entertainment, we generally refer to them as ground plans because we're not always talking about a floor of a building. Sometimes we're talking about the deck of a ship. For instance, here is the ground plan for UCS's production of Titanic. So this is not really a floor, it's a ship. Also, the convention that each floor in an architectural drawing has its own plan is turned on its head a little bit with the ground plan in theater or entertainment. This particular set had 3 different levels, 3 different floors. The highest one was 16 feet above the ground, so that would be a normal second story. But all of the sort of stories are shown in the same plan together. So it's essentially interchangeable, ground plan, floor plan, but just so you know, architectural plans have floor plans and entertainment plans have ground plans. So I said that this was, in its simplest form, an overhead view of the set, but I'm going to talk for a few minutes about why that's not entirely true. If we bring our blue cube back from last week, we remember our 6 sides, and we have what we would think would correspond to the ground plan would either be the top or the bottom or plan. And you remember last week I said that the plan is most closely related to the bottom, sort of. The ground plan is sort of a hybrid between the bottom and the top. Let me show you why. If we replace our blue cube with this white cube, which has been modified to represent a room, so we have a wall with a door, a wall with a window, another wall. If we look at the top of this, all we see is the rectangle that is either the ceiling or the floor of the whatever's upstairs. So the top view of this room is not actually particularly useful for us. So let's look at the bottom. Well, a little bit of the same problem. If we look at the bottom, all we see is the bottom of the floor. So once again, not super useful for us. What we need is a way to be able to sort of see the doors and windows and things. So you might ask yourself, well, why don't you just turn it over and remove the top? All right, well, there we go. So because this is in perspective, you can see the door and the window, but assuming you're looking straight down on top of this, you still would not be able to see the door or the window. All you would see is the top of the walls. So what we do to solve that problem is cut a section through the room. And if you don't remember the concept of sections, go back and check the first week's videos on orthographic projection. So by cutting a section through the room, so slicing through and removing the top portion of the room, now we can see clearly that there's a door and a window. So the black part here is the outline of the ground plan. I'm going to switch back to the white background so maybe you can see this a little better now. So once again, the black outline represents the outline of the room in plan. And when I talk about cutting the section, here's how the room has been sliced. The convention is this cut is generally made 3 to 4 feet above the floor. That makes it high enough to be able to cut through windows, because if, for instance, if you took the cut here below the window, it would sort of be defeating the purpose because you still wouldn't be able to see the window. If you took it high, above the window, then you wouldn't be able to see the window or the door. So 3 to 4 feet, or in, if you're in a particular case where 3 or 4 feet doesn't make sense, but 6 feet would accomplish what you need, then make it at 6 feet. So generally speaking, 3 to 4 feet above the floor, but it's really flexible. And in some complicated plans, we actually cut sections that sort of jump from part of the room to the other part of the room, just in order to make it clear. So there aren't any hard and fast rules, except that cut it so that it shows all of the architectural features, or non-architectural features, I guess. If this were a set in a forest, we would chop through the trees and we would see the rings in the trees. So the concept to remember here is that a ground plan is not a top view, is not a bottom view, but is in fact a section view from looking at it from the top, but with the top part of the object, the room, the forest, the ship, whatever, with the top part of it removed. So for this week's project, we are going to create a ground plan of the space that you measured for last week's project. Or if, now that you know what this week's project is, you discovered that last week's space isn't appropriate, feel free to use any space that you would like to create the ground plan of. Whatever space you create the ground plan of this week, we're going to use as one of the first projects in Vectorworks. In a couple of weeks, we're going to do this plan again in the computer program. So pick a space that you're interested in drawing twice. So I am going to draw my office. So as I did with the chair last week, I'm just going to start off with a really simple sketch of the space. So the overall room is 21 feet long and 11 feet wide. There's a door on the north, south. I have no idea which way this building. Let's see. That would be north, west. I think that's south. Doesn't really matter. Anyway, so there's a door on this wall, and there's a window on this wall. They are symmetrical. It's really boring architecture here. But basically a rectangle with a door on one side, a window on the other side, and a bunch of furniture in the center. We're going to do a simplified version of all of this, but certainly of the furniture, because once again, this isn't really a hand drafting class. It's a understanding drawings by doing it by hand first class right now. So we'll start by determining a scale for the 21 by 11 and sketching in lightly the room itself. So I'm going to grab my scale rule, and I'm going to look at this in 1/4 inch scale and see that 21 feet would be that long, which would actually fit on the page. So 1/4 inch scale, and let's see, 11 feet would be there. 1/4 inch scale would fit on the page for this. I think I want to do it in 1/2 inch scale, however, just because I think you'll be able to see it better in the video, and it's going to be a little bit crowded on this size paper in 1/2 inch scale. So I'm going to draw mine on a larger piece of paper so that I can draw it in 1/2 inch scale so that you can see it better in the video. But if 1/4 inch scale fits better on your page, then certainly use that. And in case I didn't say it last time, the two common scales that we use in entertainment are 1/4 inch scale and 1/2 inch scale for general plans. We use other scales to do details of things, but the most common scale that you'll find a ground plan or elevations in is either 1/4 inch scale or 1/2 inch scale. So pick whichever one of those scales will make your space fit on your paper. All right, now that I have my large piece of graph paper, I'm going to measure out the overall rectangle that represents the room, which once again was 21 feet by 11 feet. So let's see if we start here, and if this is 0, this is 21, and then from here 0 and 10, 11. Okay. This is That's where the graph paper comes in handy. So this is going to be 11. So I'm just going to lightly draw in the overall rectangle of the room. All right, there's the overall rectangle of the room, which I've drawn in lightly because I'm going to erase some of it because of the door and the window. If we go back and look at our model room and look at the black, we'll notice that it's not a single line, but it has thickness. That's because these are representing walls, and walls all have some sort of thickness. The walls here, at least the interior walls, are 6 inches thick, and I know that by opening the door and looking at the thickness of the wall and measuring it. You're welcome to do that, or you're welcome to just assume that your walls are 6 inches thick. The exterior wall is probably 8 to 12 inches thick. If you're doing an interior room, don't worry about it. If you're doing a room that has an exterior wall, then if you want to measure it, that's fine. Or if you just want to assume that all of your walls are 6 inches thick, that's fine. So I'm going to do 6-inch walls. So in half-inch scale, 6 inches is conveniently 1 square. So I'm going to draw this in, and I'm going to go ahead and assume that my exterior wall, because it's a commercial building, is a foot thick. The windows here don't actually open, so I can't open the window and look at the actual thickness of the wall, or I would. But this project isn't really about reality, it's just about concepts. So there is, well, if I actually draw that line, there is the overall wall structure of the room. If we go back to the sketch, we have a 3-foot wide door that's 12 inches from this corner. And that's measured from the inside, obviously, corner. So we're going to go 12 inches, and then 1, 2, 3 feet. So that represents the door. And I'll talk in a minute about how to actually represent that. But there's the door. And then the window is exactly the same as the door, because once again, this is not a super architecturally interesting building. So 1 foot from the corner, 1, 2, 3 feet. All right, so now that I have that sort of outline, I'm going to go back and look at this, and we'll see that we need to deal with the holes here, and there are 2 different cases for the door, the hole that's the door and the hole that's the window. But in order to get there, I'm going to go ahead and darken in my overall walls. So we're going to do this. And then on this side, we'll do the same thing. While I'm doing this, I'll just say that if anyone who actually teaches hand drafting is watching this video, they're probably screaming at the YouTube right now, because you're not supposed to actually use the scale rule to draw. You're supposed to use it to measure, and then use a straight edge as the straight edge, but we're doing it anyway. Oops, and I made a mistake already. I should not have done that, because that's the opening for the window. And then here, and here. And then finally, oops, not sure how much my head was in that last shot. All right, and I can do a little bit of cleanup. Real architectural plans, traditionally, because this is a section, would have this hatched. I'm not going to hatch this whole room, but just so you know, in order to cut this through. In the age of computers, we typically don't hatch anymore. We typically just gray in the walls. Hatching is because when reproduction technology didn't really make it possible to gray things in, and the blueprint passed. But now that we're doing things with zero graphic reproduction, if we're in fact even doing that, then gray is a possibility now. So hatching is sometimes sort of gone by the wayside. But just be aware that if you look at a real ground plan, the walls themselves should be either hatched or shaded in. But it's almost impossible to do the hatching without a T-square and a triangle, so I'm not going to ask you to do that. So then now we have to deal with the openings that are the door and the window. So because the door opening goes all the way to the floor, but does have a portion that is above, we show this as a dashed line here, which indicates that the wall goes all the way to the floor, but there is a part of the wall that's still there that is above the door. So we're going to dash this line in. And we're going to dash this line in. All right, that's the opening for the door. The window should have a dashed line that shows the top portion of the window, but it also doesn't go all the way to the floor because of this part of the wall here that's the door sill. So the door sill would be a solid line that would have a dashed line right on top of it. So the dashed line, the solid line sort of cancels out the dashed line. So for a window, we just show this as a lighter line that is there, that represents the portion of the wall that's below the window, and the dashed line is there, but you just can't see it because it's on top of the solid line, if that makes sense. So that's the representation of the door opening and the window opening. So next, we want to draw in the door itself. So back to my sketch, this door opens, this is the hinge, and this is the handle, so this door opens like this. So generally the convention is you show the door in its open configuration. So this is a 3-foot wide door. So I'm going to assume that it hinges from the center there. So I'm going to draw the door itself. So 3 feet from the center of that wall is there. I think this door is probably 1 3/4 inches thick. I'm just going to make it 2 inches because in 1/2 inch scale it's hard to. So we're going to make it that thick. So this is the door itself. And then to complete the door, we generally show the door swing. I'm going to do this with a compass to show you how you should really do it. And then I'll show you a couple ways of faking it. So this, and you can see what the compass is doing. It's following the path of the door. So this is called the door swing. It indicates a couple of things. If we put an arrow here, it shows us which way the door opens and closes, although you can also tell that by looking where the hinges are. But it also shows us the area that has to be kept clear. So if you're putting a piece of furniture here, you can't put it within this quarter circle. So that's the second reason for showing the door swing, is to show the area that has to be kept open in order for the door to swing. If you don't happen to have a compass, feel free to use something round that you have laying around. Just happen to have this candle. That's not quite the right size, but how about a roll of adding machine paper? Okay, look at that. So that would have been a good size for a coffee mug, the bottom of a glass, whatever you have laying around, because once again, if we're doing this for real, you do it with a compass. We're just looking at concepts. So in a ground plan, a door is shown by a hole in the wall with dashed lines indicating the part of the wall above the door. The door itself, which is called the leaf, if you're into door terminology, the whole thing is called the door. The part of the door that we think of as the door is the leaf. And then this is the door swing. For the window, we show the hole in the wall with lighter lines that indicate where the sill is, and then we draw in the actual window itself. Now in my case, I have a fixed glass window. It does not open, so it's essentially just a pane of glass. That's what the window looks like. If you happen to have a different type of window, for instance, a double hung window, which is a window that has a top pane and a bottom pane and one or the other of them opens, you basically just show it as two sort of rectangles. So this would be the top pane. The top pane in double hung windows is always on the outside, because when the rain hits, if it was on the other side, it would go inside the where this line is right here. So that is what a double pane window looks like. And really, when we get into the computer drafting, we're going to add details. So this really this indicates the frame, and then since this is in section, the frame would actually be, we would see the sort of sides of the frame, and there would be another line in here that actually indicates the piece of glass. Just telling you this for your reference. I'm not really asking you to go to this amount of detail. I'm perfectly happy if your window looks just like mine. It indicates that there's a window. But if you do have a double pane window, a double hung window, it looks like this. If you have a casement window, which is a window that opens in or out, you draw it like this and then just add the swing just like you would with a door. If you have any other particular they're not weird, but different architectural elements that you need to know how to draw, just shoot me an email or a text, and I'll be happy to show you. I'll tell you that one more that's kind of common is people often have bifold doors on their closets. Those are the doors that they're four pieces and they fold. So if you have that, if this is your door opening, then you just show them, and that should be dashed lines, obviously. You show those bifold doors open. They open like, I guess, like this. You show them partially open, I guess not fully open. Boy, that was a bad, I didn't line that up very well. But so that's my dash line. Once again, just to emphasize, this is for concept, not for teaching you how to draft. So those are bifold doors. There's a window. I'm trying to think of other things. Florida, you probably don't have fireplaces, but if you do, let me know, and I'll show you how to draw it. So anything that's overhead is shown with a dashed line. So if you happen to have a soffit, for instance, which is a part of the ceiling that's lower than the rest of the ceiling, this would be common maybe over a kitchen bar, where there may be the ceiling drops by a foot and has some lights in it or something. That's shown with a dashed line. If you have a beam, that's shown with a dashed line. If you wanted to draw in the ceiling fan, please don't. That would be shown with a dashed line. So anything that's above the 4 foot or 3 foot or whatever you've established as your cut line is shown as a dashed line. So now that I have the room established, I can go ahead and draw in the furniture. And I'm doing a very simplified version of this, but to be honest, usually furniture is pretty simplified on a ground plan. So this bookcase is 12 inches from the door, and it's 3 feet by 1 foot. So if I find the right scale, there's a foot, there's 3 feet. So this bookcase looks like this. Then I have 2 more bookcases that I forgot to measure how far they are from the wall, so please hold. They are 6 feet from the corner there, so we're going to measure 6 feet, which is here. And they are a foot wide, a foot of books, and then there's a bottom shelf part that's another foot wide, and there are 2 of them, and they are 36 inches wide. So there's the start. I'm going to go ahead and measure 6 feet. There's 3 feet, and there's 0. So this is where I'm taking advantage of the graph paper. There's the front of the bookcase part, and here's the front of the shelf underneath the bookcase part. There's that. All right, next there's this drafting table. This is where I am right now. So this is 3 feet by 5 feet. There's about a foot gap between the bookcase and the drafting table, so 5 feet wide by 3 feet deep gives me that. All right, there's the drafting table. Bookcase, which is our cabinet, really right next to that window. It's 3 feet by 18 inches. So I'm going to say that it's 3 inches away from the window. But so 18 inches deep is going to be, in half-inch scale, is going to be there. And if I go 3 feet, 1, 2, 3. It's going to be halfway through there. So there is that. A bunch of junk in the corner I'm just going to ignore. And then there's a desk that's 5 feet from the corner of the room. 5 feet, which is there. 36 inches wide and 20 inches deep, so 3 feet wide, 20 inches deep, which is 4 inches less. So I'm going to go, that's 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. It's going to put me right there. Once again, taking advantage of the graph paper to make it square. Sharpen my pencil. Then next to that, there's a desk that's 30 inches. So 24 plus 6 is 30, so it's here. And it's 5 feet. 4, 5 goes to there. There. And then there's a 3.5 foot round table. That's about, so 3.5 should go from here to here. Center of it's actually, the center of it's probably more like right here. So I need a circle that's about that. I wonder if my candle. Hey, look at that. All right. I know you all probably don't have an electric prop candle sitting around, but if you happen to have something round, just like the door, just find something that is approximately the right size. Obviously, if I were really drafting this, I would use the compass. Right, and there's the table. What I have not drawn is there's chairs around the table. There's a desk chair. I could. Generally, in simplified plans, the symbol for a chair is an 18-inch. So that's, in my case, 3 of my squares, an 18-inch square. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. Technically, they should be rounded off on the corners, but it requires more freehand than I'm going to do or I'm going to ask you to do. So then the final thing would be to label the furniture, because you can't really tell what this is. So this is drafting table. Books. It's really a bookcase, but table. Books. Cabinet. Desk. And, oh, dilemma. Which way should I label that? Should I go this way? I don't know. I'm going to do this way, because otherwise I have to sort of climb up on top of the desk, which I'm not interested in doing. All right, so there is the plan. Then the final thing would be to label it. And the and indicate the scale. There we have it. So do your space, put in as much simplified whatever's in the space as you need to make it make sense. And if you have a specific case of a door or a window or a weird thing that you can't figure out by thinking, okay, what happens if I just cut through it? And oh, I guess I should mention that I have not cut through the furniture because that would be weird. So even though these bookcases extend up above the 3-foot line, I'm not going to cut through the bookcases. I mean, I could, but generally you don't do that. You just it's kind of a hybrid where you cut through the walls, but you don't cut through anything else unless it's necessary. If I were going to ask someone to build these bookcases, I might actually need to cut through them to show how they were constructed or whatever. But since these are already built, then we're not gonna section those. So section the architecture, unless there's some weird case, don't section the stuff that's in the room. So obviously take a picture of this when you're done, upload it to WebCourses, and as I said, if you have any questions, give me an email or a text. All right, good luck. I did go ahead and shade this in a little bit. I sort of cheated rather than doing cross-hatching. I just did lines, which sometimes people do. What I would actually probably really do here is use a gray marker to fill it in, but I don't seem to have a gray marker handy, so I just did this because it's probably a little easier to read on the video with the walls darkened in. Okay, it's been bugging me that I don't know the direction of the building, so I pulled out the architectural plans for the theater building, of which there are hundreds of pages. And here's the plan of the second floor. This is north. This is my office, so that's west. The door is facing west. So now we know.